In a world gone mad, only rationality and common sense can save it. It's Andrew and Jerry Save the World with your hosts, Andrew Langer and Jerry Rogers. And now, here's Andrew and Jerry.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World, episode 45. Andrew and Jerry say goodbye to 2022 part 2. Obviously, this is a continuation of our conversation last week about what's going on in the world and what happened in 2022 and what we're hoping for 2023. So stay tuned. Here is episode 45 of Andrew and Jerry Save the World. So Jerry has his phone, right? And on that, he can access the entire span of human knowledge.
Yep. In
an instant. And yet never have we been dumber as a collective society. And so I'm reminded of this quote from Dickens in A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair.
Yeah. And again, it's also very amazing how Dickens, C.S. Lewis, Huxley, how they understood these things. Orwell. Look, I'm not this utopian wannabe where I think we should go back to cutting our own wood and, living in an anti-modernity way.
No, you want to go the next step. You want slight industrialization, but all of us living in the same village and having a good pub.
I love that. Yeah, right.
Right.
We talked about this. The Puritans, before they built a church, they built a pub.
Yes.
But let me say this though. What I do want is for us to have a realization that again, I've said this. I'm repeating myself from what I've said on the air this past week, but the fact of the matter is that we are not customers of Apple, of Facebook, of iPhones. We are the product. Yes. And for as long as we are the product, right? They monetize our attention, and so therefore. Sean Parker is the first president of Facebook, the founding president of Facebook.
Well, but time out for by the way, Jerry's bringing this up because the social network has been on cable quite a bit.
Sean Parker,
also the creator of Napster.
Right, Napster, yes. Right. Played by Justin Timberlake in the social network. He gave an Axios interview, I think in 2017, where he said that Facebook is destroying the minds and the psychology of our children.
Right.
Who knows the damage? He says, our whole mission is to get your attention and keep it. And again, other executives at big tech firms, Google and other firms, have said this, that we are taking advantage of your vulnerabilities to grab your attention, and so therefore we can make lots of money.
You raised two really, really interesting points here. One of them is the issue of attention spans.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah. Yes. Go ahead.
So the digital revolution, the year 2000, more or less, right?
Yeah.
The average attention span in the year 2000, the American attention span, 12 seconds.
Yeah.
Today, it's 8 seconds.
Sure. Yeah.
A goldfish is 9 seconds.
Well, there
so
you
think
go.
about how are we supposed to wrap our heads around Ukraine, the border, taxes, inflation, abortion issues, the Supreme Court, all of these issues? How are we supposed to wrap our heads around it when we have an 8-second attention span?
I don't know. Let me go check my phone. No, I'm joking.
but that's it, though.
But my point is, it's the two things that are happening. It is the commoditization of human experience, right? The idea of people are products, and we're gonna, take a look at what you're looking at and go, it's interesting. Here's my attention span kicking in, right? Because you never notice when you're watching YouTube videos, you have 5 seconds before you have to decide. In a lot of instances, they will make you watch a 12-second video or a 15-second ad, but in the most part, you can skip the ad after 6 seconds because they know that it's not going to hold your attention after that point anyway. But it's the other part of this, which is, they are, sorry, I'm coming to this idea. The two go hand in hand. They are doing what they can to keep us addicted because we are the product. That's the point you're making here, right? And so as long as you are the product, as long as you don't have ownership of your data, as long as they're using your data. And by the way, you can
comment on that.
Hold on. Anytime you are on the internet and there is a good or a service that you are getting for free, you are the product. Just so you understand that.
But I also think it part of how they distract us is we get caught up on thinking that what they want is our data. No, they make money off our data, but really it's our attention that they want. And you just said the proper word, addiction.
Yeah.
Psychologist. What is it called, Andrew, when you lose a limb but you still feel it?
Oh, it's phantom. It's like nerve memory or something like that.
Right, but there's a medical term for it.
Yeah.
Well, in the last 20 years, the medical community has come up with very similar terms. For instance, when you think you feel your phone vibrate, but it's not.
No, I don't know that. I haven't. No.
There's a mental health condition that people believe, think, feel that their phone is going off, but it's not. That's how attached. That's how attached we've become to our devices.
But the other part of it is, right, it's the feeling of loss and panic when you don't have your phone around you, where you don't know where it is.
But that's a problem.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's funny. I watched, turn our attention to something in media. I watched this season of White Lotus, which I don't like, but I feel like I have to watch. I get drawn in.
My girls are watching it, I think.
White Lotus, it's a bizarre series. The White Lotus is a resort company. And so the first season took place at the White Lotus in Hawaii. This season takes place at the White Lotus in Sicily. And it's all these really wealthy, horrible people just sort of engaging in their horrible nature. It's a whole weird thing. And it's got the lady, Jennifer Coolidge, who's doing those Old Navy commercials that I hate now.
Oh, yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. Sorry, not sorry. Whatever the hell it is.
Stifler's mom.
Who, listen, I'm a fat guy. You're a gentleman of large carriage. I feel like I can say this. Stifler's mom looks like she ate Stifler's mom and Stifler. I mean,
well, come on. She must be in her late 60s.
Well, whatever. I mean, but the point is, so her assistant essentially loses her phone and like flips out over not being able to find her phone. But there's a reason for it. There's an emergency that's going on. But that is a problem in society. This and it's one that's growing. I mean, yeah. So the point is, see, I go in a different direction on this, Jerry. It's all about dopamine and dopamine addiction in your head.
Well, I mean, but that's what they use.
Yes.
I mean, you're right. You're talking about the mechanisms.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the outcome. And the outcome is this: in the digital age, we have lost our capacity to pay attention. And so therefore we've lost our capacity to think. So therefore we've lost our capacity at self-government.
You ever think about, I don't know if you ever had to read these. You were in public school for a little while when you were in the 70s? Or were you always in Catholic school?
I was in PS 86 in the Bronx.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And
then I went to Our Lady of
Angels. We were living in
Angels.
Riverdale. It was PS 81. That's so funny. But my point is actually, this is good.
By the way, where I grew up in the Bronx on Reservoir Avenue, I mean, we were, where Lehman College is.
Yeah, I know exactly where it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I lived down the block from Lehman College.
Okay. But my point is, did you read, how you moved when you were 10?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was in fourth grade.
Fourth grade. So you remember the reading books we used to read with all the little stories in them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
I love those. I still love them. Especially the Houghton Mifflin and the Bank Street Readers.
I don't remember what their names are.
I do. I remember them very well.
You got speaking of Sheldon Cooper, you're the Sheldon Cooper of the podcast.
But let me also explain why. My aunt was a principal in the New York City public school system in the Bronx,
Really?
and she would bring me reading books. So I had like collections of them. To digress, there was a really great one that had art from Battlestar Galactica on the front of it, and I think it was sort of weirdly random.
You and I could have
there
been.
Were all kinds of
we're not very nerdy, but we could have been on The Big Bang Theory because we love Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica,
yeah, absolutely,
Indiana Jones, right?
Yes, Indiana Jones, who of course there's that great theory on The Big Bang Theory. Indiana Jones, completely inconsequential to the plot of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes, it's true.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, my point is, you read books. We read stories when we were kids that were sort of projections of what the future was going to be. You know, learning from home and how great it would be to learn from home, or to have, you know, lessons implanted in your brain, or to have access to immediate information. Like when Jerry, obviously, and I think most of our listeners are in the same way, when we were kids in the 70s, this is right before the home computer age, right? This is barely the video game age. And you think about this stuff, the home video, like the VCR, like the first VCRs were just coming out when we were kids.
They weren't even VCRs. The first was the Betamax. I remember my dad got a Betamax.
Really?
Remember Betamax?
Yeah.
My father eventually, we had a Betamax in our house in Jersey. So this is the 80s now, early 80s, I guess. But anyway, my father took our Betamax and he traded it to a guy at work for a car. True story.
That is such a New York story.
Yes, he traded the Betamax for a Colt. Remember the Colt?
Oh my God, yes.
A tiny little I think it was a 4-speed. But regardless, my father traded a Betamax for a car.
And it's funny because Jerry and I were just talking, and Jerry was making a joke to me about recording something using a camcorder. Was that you I was talking to about this?
No, it wasn't me. Oh, was it you?
Yeah, you and me.
I don't know.
We were having this.
Because you wanted to make a sex tape.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, because that's what we do. So
on one of your couple dates.
We had a VCR, Jerry, that had two parts to it. And one of them was the camcorder thing that you could sling over your shoulder.
Yeah, of course.
So
Yes.
My point is this. We never, when we were kids, we thought about how technology was going to be so cool, and it was going to make and in many ways, technologies have made our lives better.
Yes.
But none of us, I mean, yes, you had dystopian writers predicting the problems. I'll tell you something, Jerry. Pete Townsend was right. I don't know if you know this, but the Who's Next album that came out in 1971, do you know the story behind this? The Who's Next album was based on a concept. He'd done Tommy, about the kid who was deaf, dumb, and blind.
Yeah.
And then later on he did Jimmy in Quadrophenia. But in the middle was this thing called the Lifehouse. And the whole point of the Lifehouse, Jerry, was that people were living lives in isolation in sensory deprivation units with virtual reality. And there was essentially going to be a revolution against it. And we were going to learn, by the way, that the meaning of life was one musical note. So a lot of the songs on Who's Next, Baba O'Reilly, Won't Get Fooled Again, Going Mobile, are all about the sort of this tension between.
And that's 30 years before the digital age.
Yeah, I mean, well, 30 years before real virtual reality. The point is that Pete Townsend recognized then about the potential disconnection that technology could bring.
Well, because you know what? Yes, you're right, and so did Postman, so did Huxley, so did
Philip
Lewis,
K. Dick. Absolutely,
so many. But here's the thing: it's obvious. Look, our standard default now, our standard default setting is partial attention. I'm not saying you and I'm saying broadly humankind. We are in a constant state of partial attention. Here, listen, the big tech, broadly big tech is the greatest, the largest, the most centralized, most standardized attention control system in the history of humankind.
By the way, I'm going to tell all of you, I'm going to give you this tip. If you're in sales, selling anything, the best way to sell something is to make it clear that you're listening to the person you're trying to sell to about what their concerns are. It's something that I learned from a CEI donor many years ago that I sat down with, who we're talking about somebody else, and they said, well, the difference between you and that person is you listen, and it's a matter of paying attention and making sure the person that knows that you're holding their attention. And we've gotten very far afield of all of this.
But again, I think this is a theme. This is 2022, the big stories. I think the biggest story of 2022, I know it's Ukraine, I know it's the border, I know inflation, I know the midterms, all big stories. But the biggest story I think is the Twitter story. And the reason why I think that is because big tech, again, I'll say it for a second time because I think it's very important. Big tech is the greatest, the largest, the most centralized, the most standardized attention control system in the history of humankind.
Right.
And that is why we can't govern ourselves. This is why our public discourse is the way it is. This is why we have cancel culture, attacks on free speech. I think every issue, Andrew, that we've discussed this year can go back to the fact that we are in this constant state of distraction. And that's a problem for a democracy.
And when you have
and for liberty.
And when you have the FBI, so a law enforcement agency with the federal government with enormous power in and of itself, paying Twitter millions of dollars. And I'm not making that up. Jerry, when I first heard it, I will say this because I called Jerry almost immediately after this. When I heard that story that the FBI had paid Twitter millions of dollars, I said, this can't be true. This has got to be fringy conspiracy theorizing.
Yep. I thought the same thing when you told me.
And then I went and I read the story and I'm like, wait a minute, what? So put the two of them together, right? And again, this is getting beyond the issue. And Jerry and I also had this conversation about the First Amendment. Let's set aside the concept of First Amendment and Congress and the FBI here. The point is, in the end, free speech is protected vis-a-vis government so that government can't turn around and have a chilling effect on free speech, either overtly or covertly, right? Either by directing a social media company to silence an account or do investigations, or by creating the patina, sort of manipulating the conversation, so that things are, things cannot be discussed and dissent cannot be had. I'm sorry, go ahead.
For some of our listeners who remember the old days, if you were hanging out, you and I, Andrew, we were on our bikes, kids in our neighborhood, and we were hanging out somewhere, and a cop car drove by, and this would happen. What are you kids doing here? Don't congregate here. Go home or go somewhere else. We left.
Yeah,
we left because the police. It was intimidating.
Yes.
When the FBI, so fast forward to the digital age, the FBI comes in to Twitter. Or now you have members of Congress, Schiff and others, telling Facebook, threatening, saying, when the government tells you, you better not do this, or you better move along, or you better listen to me. Yeah, there might not be any kind of overt levers, but the fact is that's still intimidation. That's still stifling free speech. It's still censorship.
Right.
It still violates the principles of free speech, the free exchange of ideas, and the First Amendment.
It's interesting because we've talked quite a bit about Operation Choke Point, which was this Obama era program, and I'll say this, built upon a George W. Bush era program, now called Operation Choke Point. And the idea behind Operation Choke Point was, we can't shut down gun and ammunition manufacturers and dealers. We cannot shut down payday lenders directly. We can't do any of this directly. We cannot stifle dissenting speech directly. But what we can do is use the power of regulators and the power of regulation to put pressure on those engaging in financial transactions with these folks.
But again, you'd think on its face that also is a violation. Jonathan Turley, to your point, you're making a point. Jonathan Turley said that, or maybe it wasn't Jonathan Turley, maybe it was our friends at Reason. I forget, but someone smarter than me made this statement or made this point that the FBI farming out to Twitter,
Right.
or big tech, what the FBI is barred doing doesn't mean that the FBI is still not manipulating and stifling
Yes.
and causing censorship.
You cannot sidestep the Constitution by doing it through by farming it out, by contracting it out.
But wasn't that the case with, or should have been, the argument against Operation Choke Point?
Well, and it was, right. I mean, that
Right.
was certainly my argument against it. And,
Right.
and when the House committee did their report on it, that was their conclusion. And Operation Choke Point was shut down. The point is, in the end, it sort of laid out the framework for how these things can be done. You know, I will never forget this, Jerry, again. And it makes me sound like a fringe conspiracy theorist. And you know me, I love a good conspiracy, and I've touted weird conspiracies before. But when I first brought up Operation Choke Point to a talk radio host at CPAC, they essentially accused me of lying. They said that's not happening. There's no way that's happening. I'm like, well,
I mean, how many times has that happened this year?
yes.
Some crazy story like that can't be true. Here, something very simple, something very recent, something that closed out the year 2022, which is the House Ways and Means Committee voting party line vote to release Donald Trump's tax returns.
Good point.
It's against the law. I did some research on this. You and I asked you, does the Congress have this capacity to do this without legislative purpose or oversight purpose? It doesn't.
Yeah.
And so the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, in a lame session, has broken the law. And it doesn't make a difference.
Right.
Because he'll never be held accountable.
Right.
And the tax returns are already released. And again, another norm just smashed.
Yes.
And again, back to this attention deficit disorder that we have, we'll forget about this.
And that's it's so funny because I used to talk about this with regards to the Clintons, right? And the way the Clintons would do things. An allegation would come out against the Clintons. They would put their playbook off the shelf. They would delay. And when finally the truth will out, and the initial allegation was proven correct, the Clintons would turn around and say, oh, that's old news. Everybody knew that. We dealt with that years ago.
Right.
And that's the thing. Listen, we got a couple minutes left. Before we talk about hopes and dreams for 2023, unless you want to do that as our first show of 2023, which we could do, we do have to talk about the Supreme Court. And I had originally wanted to sort of wind our way into it through the political violence side of it. But the two other big stories, right? Actually, you talk about accountability. It has now been 260. No, it's not. Yeah, maybe 260 days since the Dobbs decision was leaked. And we still don't know who leaked it.
And we'll never know.
And at this point, we'll never know. That's a problem.
Right.
But then on the other hand, bits of good news, the Dobbs decision, West Virginia versus EPA, the regulatory decision, and the issue of deference, even though it was a little bit narrower than we would have liked, and the Kennedy decision on religious liberty in public schools. Sure. Those are three really great stories of 2022. Anyway, the caveat being we shouldn't have to rely on the Supreme Court. But
right, of course. But here's the thing too. So in my mind, the court has made good decisions this session. However, in previous sessions, I thought the court made wrong decisions. But my attitude toward the court has remained exactly the same. When the court was deciding things that I thought, I believed, based on the Constitution, based on the law, based on our history, were out of order, I didn't declare that the court was illegitimate. And again,
exactly,
not that my voice matters as much as, but it seems that the entire progressive establishment, from the Democratic Party to Hollywood, they're all on the same, singing from the same song page, that the court is not legitimate. And this, again, in this age of distraction, in this age of social media and clicks and Twitter, it's dangerous, because talk to your average American and they will tell you that there's a problem, a legitimacy problem with the court. They won't be able to tell you why, or they won't be able to.
Well, no, some of them will, right? It starts with The court is illegitimate because Republicans stole a seat. And then the court is illegitimate because Donald Trump got to appoint people, and Donald Trump was illegitimate. Right. That's
and
the
again,
logic.
and the great irony there is that, well, then what you're saying then is that the 2016 election was not legitimate, so therefore you're an election
denier.
It's just,
Yes.
again, if we were to have reasonable, rational, this is why I will debate any lefty, anytime, anywhere, and I won't even go in prepared. Like, just tell me to show up. It could, just say, call me and show up right now, and I'll show up. I would give them days to prepare, and I'd still go and debate them. Even, and I know that there are lefties with higher IQs than mine. I get that. But the fact is that if we're going to have a reasonable conversation on the facts, a rational conversation on the arguments, I win every time. This is why on the Jerry Rogers Show, I have a Jerry's Just Right segment now.
Yes.
Because everything I've said over the past 5 years on my radio show, I've been correct. I've been right.
Should I have a segment, Langer rhymes with anger?
But you're not an angry guy.
No, I'm not.
I'm an angry guy, but
man.
But the fact is that it's that if you turn their arguments against them, what is even the proper term? Their arguments are self-defeating.
It's judo. I mean, it's the judo school of argumentation.
Right.
It's using your opponent's arguments against them.
Jamie, let me tell you this. Again, I think a big story of 2022, of course, is the J6 committee. The star, the celebrity coming out of J6 is, in addition to Ms. Cheney, it's Jamie Raskin.
Yes.
Democrat congressman from Maryland. But here's the thing. So I again, because the truth matters and facts are important, I went back and did some research on Jamie Raskin. Jamie Raskin in 2016 gave an interview to the Washington Post where he said that celebrity and wealth don't mix with leadership. That if your intent is celebrity and if you come from a position of great wealth, you're not going to be able to offer statesmanship and leadership, right? He said this in 2016.
Sure.
Fast forward 2022. Axios did a big piece on him where he is called the emerging star of the Democratic Party.
Yes.
In it, other Democratic operatives say that he's a celebrity, that he is famous, that he has star power. And so therefore their strategy is to use the celebrity Jamie Raskin to thwart the GOP oversight investigations. Star power versus the GOP. So there you go. It used to be celebrity and leadership didn't mix, but now it does.
Of course.
Second, his wife is a well-connected person in Washington, D.C., is a multimillionaire, has been given millions of dollars for just sitting on boards where she doesn't show up. And she has this wealth and this connection. She served in the Biden administration, and she's served as advisors to sustainable investment, climate change, ESG investing.
Yeah.
He's made millions of dollars, and the Raskins are incredibly wealthy. Incredibly wealthy. So again, he has celebrity and he has wealth. The two things that he said in 2016 would disqualify someone from leading in Congress. But yet here we go. Has he changed his opinion about this?
Well,
the funny thing,
he does. Yeah.
No, but the thing is, he'll still use the anti-celebrity, anti-wealth argument against his opponents, even though he. So again, this is the point, right? 2022. You and I talk about hypocrisy. It's not hypocrisy. Here's another revelation from 2022. We have now entered into hierarchy. Jamie Raskin can be a celebrity and wealthy and still say and believe and put upon you that celebrity and wealth don't mix with leadership.
100%.
Because
it's like anybody in celebrity any wealthy celebrity who says, wealth and power for me,
But
but
there's-
not for thee.
but there's
Notoriety for
liter-
me, but not for thee.
Right. There's literally two standards.
And
we used to say that was hypocrisy. It's not. The two standards are now just accepted on the left.
Yeah.
There are two standards.
right.
Our
Yes.
standard and the standard for everyone else.
And
this
to
is
sort of
this is how they're
put-
going to
pull it back, right? These are the
Yeah.
same folks who say, and this is folks on the left have said this. You cannot be election denialism is only a disease of the right. You cannot be an election denier and be on and be on the left.
Even though Benny Thompson, chairman of the J6 committee, denied and still denies the 2016 elections, even though Jamie Raskin wanted to not seat the Electoral College in 2017, and we can go down this list. I mean, there are literally hundreds. The Clinton campaign had attorneys, lawyers working on strategies to get alternative electors to be seated in 2017.
Not only that, I got emails.
Yeah,
I got emails in 2016. So if you understand, I had been an elector for John McCain. I'm not proud of that, but I was an elector for John McCain.
Well, he was the nominee.
What?
He was the nominee.
He was the nominee, and I was a Republican Party official, and I was in the 1st congressional district.
Yeah,
anyway,
there you go.
That's my point. But the point is, I was getting emails to change my vote as an elector in 2016 away from Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So it happens. Yeah, I want to come back to this though, Jerry, because we talked a little bit about the Dobbs leaker, but let's talk about the decisions themselves. I mean, we don't want to have to rely on the high court, but this is the Dobbs decision out of the three that I mentioned. That is an incredibly important decision moving forward.
Of course, and again, for our friends who are pro-abortion, pro-choice, it doesn't make illegal abortion. What it does is it sends it back to the states, which is the proper place for these decisions to be made. And it looks like, at least at the state level, the pro-life and the pro-choice side are kind of battling to a kind of a neutral place where states like New York have allowed abortion up until the 4th trimester, by the way. There are states that if a baby's born alive through an abortion, that you can let it die, which is barbaric. But you have states that are allowing that. There's a bill in Virginia, in Maryland, to do the same thing. And then you have states like Mississippi or Texas with more restrictions. The bottom line is this on abortion. My Democratic friends, you cannot codify Roe through Congress. You can't pass a Roe v. Wade plus bill, have the president sign it, and codify Roe. This Supreme Court would come in and strike it down. But however, let me say this to my friends on the right: you can't codify a ban on abortion. Senator Graham from South Carolina had the idea of putting forward a ban on abortion, a 15-week abortion ban. Yeah. Which is, again, 70 to 80% of Americans agree with that after 15 weeks, after a heartbeat, after a fetus can feel pain, after these very scientific,
and on the same level as many European nations, by the way. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, the entire EU. But I agree with that policy. I mean, look, I'm pro-life without exception, but however, I would vote for that. But just like you can't codify Roe, you can't have a national ban on abortion.
Right.
The court in Dobbs is very clear about this. The court said that the federal government, Congress, is neutral when it comes to abortion. It is a role for the states. So we can't ban abortion in Congress, and we can't codify.
No, the battlefield really has to deal with federal funding and the monies that can be used.
But here's another interesting thing. The Democrats were brilliant. Again, because we don't pay attention, how many Americans believed, how many women in suburbia believed that if they had a miscarriage, they would not be able to get care at a hospital.
Or an ectopic pregnancy, all of those things.
You know who said that over and over and over again? It wasn't fringe groups. The president of the United States said it from the White House.
Right.
The president of the United States, Joe Biden, said from the White House that a woman in the midst of a miscarriage, because of this Dobbs decision, could not get care in a health facility.
Right. This gets into the other story of the year, and it's not just this year, but I mean it is sort of the media not holding the Democrats accountable for what they say, right? Joe
or
Biden,
the media being so misinformed that they believe that to be true as well, because they're ideological.
Is that, and this is part of the,
Right.
the great thing about
But you're right, though.
Twitter. There's a fact check there, but no, I mean the issue of the double standard, right? They held Donald Trump accountable for every dumb thing that Donald Trump said, and stuff that was opinion they would say is a lie. Joe Biden makes factual statements that are not true
and dangerous statements,
and there is rare accountability. Whether it's the abortion issue or whether it's you couldn't own a cannon back,
Second Amendment,
and those things, to the recent weird story about giving his uncle the Congressional Medal of Honor.
The Purple Heart.
The Purple Heart.
His uncle won the Purple Heart at the Battle of the Bulge.
Maybe that was
some major battle that we would recognize. And he said that his uncle never received it. And his dad said, "Hey, Joey, now that you're vice president, it'd be nice to give your uncle the Purple Heart."
Yeah.
And he said, as vice president, he had the honor to award his uncle the Purple Heart, except his uncle died in 1999.
Yes.
And Joe Biden became president in the year 2008.
Yeah, vice president, 2008.
Vice president. I'm sorry. So therefore,
was his dad, and I had the other question was his dad even alive? But that's just it, right?
So impossible. What he said he did was impossible.
Yes. The getting arrested going to see Mandela story, which has been thoroughly debunked. He repeated that recently.
Still says it.
And that's the thing, right? It's one of those situations where it would be one thing if he said these things, he was called on it even by the right-wing press, and then he stopped saying it. But he repeats these stories as though they're true. I mean, the bizarre stories that are out there. In fact, let's sort of shift our gears, Jerry, for a couple of minutes and talk about the midterm elections. Right. And because as you had said, this is the Republicans massively underperformed. And actually, let's tie this into, I think, a question for 2023, which is the midterms, Trump's behavior up to and after, Trump's behavior leading into the Georgia runoff. And then, because you and I haven't had a show where we've talked about the NFTs.
Yeah,
the digital trading cards.
Who, by the way, it looks like he has violated, I guess, copyright. That he has unauthorized use of images.
The word is that he took at least some of the photoshopped images were out of a catalog. Now I don't know. They seem to be manipulated. I have no idea. Listen, we can get into the allegations. We could get, there are allegations that this whole thing was a massive sort of money laundering scam, right? Because, listen, I don't know
what it is and his motivation behind it. None of that matters. What matters is that it is evidence that he cannot ever be president of the United States ever again.
Yeah.
He has gone into parody. He has gone into a bizarro world of Trump, more bizarre than before.
And by the way, this gets into this is an entirely separate issue from whether or not J6, the dumb criminal referral that was non-surprising and will go nowhere and further politicizes the situation. This gets out of the issue of Trump's tax returns and how wrong it is for the House Ways and Means Committee to release them. This is just dumb. It's dumb and bizarre. I do think there's something to be said on the issue of NFTs and securities and
also remember he's a better president than Washington and Lincoln.
No,
have you seen the video of him promoting the NFT trading cards?
He
starts off by saying that his presidency, that Donald Trump was a greater president than Washington and Lincoln.
Oh my God.
That's what he says.
I mean,
and not with a sense of humor or satire. He says it because he means it.
I mean, it really is a parody. I mean, it becomes parody.
Watch the video. Can you pull it up? Watch the video because it's like a Saturday Night Live skit.
Yeah, I'll pull it up.
I don't understand. Again, I don't understand why our friends who are Trump supporters, why they can't just let go of this. And again, I don't mean elected officials. I don't mean policy leaders or policy experts. I'm talking about the kind of rank and file.
Right.
No one should support this guy. And there's lots of reasons not to support him, like his again, his dinner with anti-Semites, like his blowing up the midterms in Pennsylvania,
Here we go.
In Georgia, in states, everywhere where he had a major candidate, we lost. He won't invest money. I keep on hearing from pundits that, well, if Trump loses the primary, he'll run as a third party candidate. No, he won't.
Yeah.
And he won't because he won't have the capacity. He won't have the money. You have to get yourself on a ballot, which means you have to have organization and you have to have fundraising.
Listen,
he won't do those things.
I don't. Well, listen, I never discount what Trump's going to do or not do.
Right.
I've been down that road
but we can judge him by 2016, 2020, and that is he never raised money. He never spent money.
Let me play this.
Hello, everyone. This is Donald Trump. Hopefully your favorite president of all time, better than Lincoln, better than Washington, with an important announcement to make. I'm doing my first official Donald J. Trump NFT collection right here and right now. They're called Trump Digital Trading Cards. These cards.
All right. I don't need to see anymore.
So that wasn't a joke. He meant that when he said that.
Wow.
Right.
He said better
than Lincoln.
Ezra. Better than Ezra.
Fuck dicks. How can anyone in their right mind? Yesterday, this week I was on WBAL hosting.
Actually, well, by the time this comes out, this is last week. You're also going to be on this week.
Yeah, well, one of my stints, the Jerry Rogers show over at WBAL, a caller called in who listened to my show back in 2016.
Yes.
So I must have been fill-in hosting or guest hosting in 16. The Jerry Rogers show, I think, is going into its 4th or 5th year.
Something like that, yeah.
I'm at WBAL for 5+ years, regardless. Yeah. He called in and said, he hadn't called in for years, and said, Jerry, I want to ask you a question. You talked about how in 2016, you were against Trump, that you were supporting other people in the primary. And then toward the end of the primary season, it was your father who pulled you aside. And it was your father who convinced you that Trump was worth the vote. Don't waste it on a third party. Don't waste it by bullet voting, but you have to support Donald Trump. And I told that story on the air about my dad when he pulled me aside. But then the caller asked me this question. He said, do you still feel that way? Have you evolved? Have your thoughts and opinions on Donald Trump changed through the years? And I said, well, of course. I said, during his presidency, his trade policies, tax policies, foreign policy, his foreign policy in Middle East, the moving of the embassy from Tel Aviv to Israel, to Jerusalem, rather. I said, I supported all of those items. I think his biggest mistake was not using the office of the presidency, the power of the presidency to force open the economy again in COVID. Yeah. I said, but I think Operation Warp Speed was a great success. I said, but however, since then, when he caused Republicans not to vote in the Georgia runoffs in 2000, when he essentially threw Mike Pence under the bus and said he was a weak man, he was not standing up for the voters, when he refused to strongly condemn what was happening on January 6th. And then since then, his myriad bad choices, I said, yeah, my opinion has changed. I don't think he should be within an 8-mile radius ever again of the White House.
Yeah.
I don't think he should be president again. And he actually said, the caller said, I'm surprised you're saying that, Jerry, because most talk show hosts once they dig in, they stay dug in.
All right.
And I said, and right here, I said, but the facts have changed.
Right.
And I base my opinions and my commentary off the facts.
And what's happening in front of us. I pulled up, for those of you who are listening, I pulled up while Jerry was talking, the piece that he and I published on November 7th of 2016, Rethinking Never Trump, How a Trump Presidency Could Result in Limited Executive Power. Now, of course, the Democrats and Republicans couldn't come together and do that, which is a whole nother thing, which we don't need to get into. But on that issue of talk radio hosts and Trump, most talk radio hosts actually are in the same mold. Conservative talk radio hosts, a great many of them, have been really questioning, especially as of late, Donald Trump in the post-presidency. And I got to tell you, right, and I said this because I was on the air on WMAL last week filling in. When you're Donald Trump and you lose Steve Bannon, when you lose Mike Flynn, when you lose Sebastian Gorka, you're in serious trouble. I mean, hell, Jenna Ellis had to do a bit of a tap dance on social media.
What happened there?
Well, Jenna Ellis said you can love a president or a candidate and be unhappy about certain individual things that they do, which is, I think, the closest we'd ever come to Jenna Ellis actually criticizing Donald Trump for something. But that's the thing. You know, things have changed. Donald Trump did great things as president. Was he a better president than Washington or Lincoln? No. And it is asinine of him to say that.
George Washington, who literally defined the presidency, it hadn't existed before him. Many of the traditions and practices of the presidency today, best practices, are in place because of George Washington and his forethought and his humility. And Lincoln literally kept the nation together. Yeah. But yet Donald Trump in his mind believes that he is a better president, or was a better president, than both Lincoln and Washington.
I urge everybody to go and read Team of Rivals, The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln by Doris Kearns Godwin, because it is the definitive work about Abraham Lincoln and what he had to do as president.
I love her, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, politically we're at odds, but she is a huge baseball fan. And if you ever get a chance to see Ed Burns.
Not Ed Burns. Ken Burns. Ed Burns is the Irish actor, Jerry.
That's right. Who I met, by the way, in New York at Pat Conway's bar.
I am shocked at that.
But that's another story. It's a good story. But Ken Burns, baseball, right?
Yeah.
She's in that for part of it, and she tells a story about how baseball, the love affair with baseball, really had much to do with her love and respect and relationship with her father.
Interesting.
It's a wonderful story. I like her very much because of that, because she understands baseball as America's pastime. And again, here's an example of politically I disagree with her, but still can value her thoughts and her and her stories and from where she comes. We've lost that. Again, is 2022 the year we lost the idea of friendships outside of our political tribe,
or the admiration of people who are of the other team who do things that we like?
Yeah.
You know, again, we don't worship them. Jerry, before we end, the last, you know, again, as we're recording this, big story of 2022, Aaron Judge named captain of the Yankees.
It's 16th captain in team history. The Yankees, of course, were the Highlanders in, I think, 1909, and then
but there can be
Yankees.
Only one, Jerry. That's a Highlander reference. Never mind.
Actually, you know, of the 16 captains, I mean, look, Babe Ruth was a captain.
Yep.
But we think of Lou Gehrig, though.
Sure, of course.
So for me, the big three are Gehrig, Munson,
of course,
and Jeter.
Yeah, that's where I would go. 100%. It's big, stunning news. He has very big shoes to fill, especially Derek Jeter's shoes.
Yeah. Nice when they announced this and they introduced him to the media in New York, who was sitting next to him.
Who was that? Was Jeter next to him?
Derek Jeter was next.
There
to him.
You go. Sorry, as we sort of end this, because Charlie had just gone out. Jerry, listen, we did 2 shows today with
Excellent.
all of this. We will do our wishes and hopes for 2023 when we come back in the new year. You have big Christmas plans, big New Year's plans?
Well, I mean, look, I mean, it's always big. It's always big because it's Christmas, and you know, we made it a point this year to really try to live in a state of gratefulness.
Yeah.
The Rogers, all of us, all 7 of us, my immediate family, the 7 of us in our immediate family, every single day we've written down, not just said it out loud, but actually put it on paper or text. The 3 things that day that we're grateful for.
Wait,
and
the 3 things you need to know?
3 things that we're grateful for. I think that we're not made, like, God's purpose or God's will for us isn't for us to live in a constant low-grade anxiety or fear or stress.
Yeah.
And, you know, for many people, Christmas is stressful. And if you think about the many blessings, we all have troubles and turmoils and these things, but Christmas really is the season to remember that God gave us his son for salvation, for
Yes.
eternal life. You know, let me say, I know we're winding down, but let me say this. C.S. Lewis once wrote that there is no ordinary person, that every person you meet is an immortal.
Okay.
And again, if you believe in the salvation story, you understand
Sure.
exactly what
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis was saying. I think it's important, you know, we're talk show guys. You remember Paul Harvey.
Of course, the rest of the story.
All right, so there's a story that Paul Harvey said his Christmas broadcast. The story is, I think, The Man and the Birds. And he talks
Okay.
about, and I won't read it. It's a multi, you know, it'll take too long. But I suggest, I recommend to our audience, go and find Paul Harvey. I think the story is called The Man and the Birds, and read it. It's a short read, but essentially what it is that this man on a winter's night hears this pounding or this noise outside his door, outside his house, and it's sparrows.
Yes.
And he tries to rescue them from the harsh winter. And at some point he realizes that I can only save them if I myself became a sparrow. And again, it's a good metaphor
Wow.
for Christmas. You know, how did God save us? He saved us by becoming one of us.
You know, Simon and Garfunkel did a song called "The Sparrow," which extends into this. Listen, I'm reminded of this. I'm gonna read this as a way of closing us out. This is Linus's speech from A Charlie Brown Christmas, which I have not watched yet this year. By the way, halfway through Christmas Vacation, Jerry.
You can't watch it in bits and pieces, you
We're halfway
crazy
through.
guy. Just
Well,
watch.
unfortunately, I'd been on the air. I've been on the air from.
We'll go back
5
and
a.m. to
start
9
it
a.m.
from the beginning. And
No,
read it.
it's all right. I'm doing fine.
All right, whatever.
Linus says, "For behold, I bring unto you tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you: ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards men." That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown. So from
awesome.
all of us to all of you, Jerry, we wish you a Merry Christmas and the happiest of New Years. Jerry,
Happy Christmas and Merry New Year.
And Merry New Year. Merry Crimble, as John Lennon would say. Jerry, what do you want people to do?
Oh, find the truth. Plant your feet. Stand firm. God bless you all.
Have a great Christmas. Have a great New Year. And please stay safe. And Jerry and I will see you in 2023.